Welcome to the new hit podcast, The Right Path. Folks, this is the place where being an author, an actual author, still matters. This is the podcast that's for authors, it's about authors, and it's by authors, where we share our journeys, we explore our creativity, and we examine the why behind it all. Folks, our guest today, I am so happy to have this man with us. He is an author, a screenwriter, and a storyteller. He's written many books, and the one that we're going to talk about today is called Genetic Key Number. It's an illustrated epic science fantasy novella. Folks, I cannot wait to hear about this book. Please welcome Menelaus Gkikas. Menelaus, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, Rory. I'm grateful you're giving me the chance to stand up and talk about my book. I can answer your questions as soon as possible.
You got it. All right, we're ready. I tell you what, this is an amazing idea behind your book. What gave you the idea in the first place to write this book?
Well, this book, Rory, originates many years ago. My first arcane and mystical considerations and brainstorming of writing the book existed back when I was a soldier in the Greek army. We're talking about the age of 2004, 2005. No, excuse me, it's 2005. I joined my army service in 2005. Back then, I had no idea of the professional standards and the art and science of creative writing. I just had an idea and some raw brainstorming, but I was neglecting many of the laws of creative writing. So, as you understand, there was raw material and only my will and my dream to write a genetic key number. Later on, after some few brainstorming and some failed attempts, where I realized I was writing gobbledygook because, as you understand, I was not well educated to write a book. I put it aside and I continued my postgraduate studies in City University of Seattle with an MBA. Later on, my path found me in literature and social networking, creative writing education, and only after I was illuminated to attend artificial intelligence classes and solid experience in quantum physics, I felt I was eventually ready to reapproach the initial idea, not with arcane and mystical standards, but on the into the light of day. So, as you understand, we're talking about a journey from 2004 to 2023. As soon as I graduated from the University of Athens with an AI certificate, this book is heavily influenced from AI, genetic algorithms, the library universe of Jorge Luis Borges, and some quantum physics concepts. And as you understand, it took many transformations and many inner rehabilitations to be ready and be inspired to write epic science fantasy. If you want to hear about how I brainstorm and what about my ideas related with the book, I can definitely answer this to you as well.
I would love to hear about that. This is fascinating. You've been working on this for a long time. So yeah,
Yes, yes.
tell me how you
I was
brainstorm
not
this.
I was not working consciously. I have an idea, and as a matter of fact, I borrowed a concept I had at the initial period, a concept related with many independent passages contribute to something greater. I believe this is the only idea I kept constant from the initial brainstorming to to brainstorm and fantasize independent passages that contribute to something greater and beyond the independent passages. So, as a matter of fact, yes, it was a very long period, not conscious all the time, many transformations and many readjustments.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Wonderful. Now, this is your first foray into the science fantasy. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes. So, with the other books that you've written, this is kind of a departure. Was that different? Was the process of writing the book much different for you, writing this book as opposed to the other books that you've written?
The process of writing this book was very similar to writing Rose Garden A Second Chance. Rose Garden A Second Chance, my other book, is also an epic fairy tale fantasy. I have written two epics, and when I say epics, I don't mean novels, I mean novellas. The two epics are very close to one another. I mean, the process is similar, the brainstorming is similar, subject matter correlate a lot, even though the one is fairy tale and the other one is science fantasy. Uh, the actual subject matter and the pace of writing and the themes and the genres correlate a lot. I believe it will have the same the same feeling with my fairy tale venture.
I see. I see. So, in writing this book, most of the time when we as authors are writing a book, we're writing this book to someone or a particular reader or a particular person, or we're writing it for somebody. Who did you write this book to?
This book, before I answer these questions, I would like to clarify a few things of its concept, to understand its target audience.
Okay.
The book deals with the fantasy and the gaming universe of Jorge Luis Borges. Jorge Luis Borges, the Argentine writer, brainstormed something like a library universe. This library universe has many neat concepts related with physics, cosmology, and the actual universe. Nevertheless, the library universe is entailed of books, magic books, of unchangeable and magical forms of ideas, magic books, where you can travel into these magic books. Information is being teleported with quantum teleportation. And these independent books, infinite books, as a matter of fact, it's a library of infinite books, a library where every story possible can be found. You can find every possible project of art, every possible piece of music, every possible formula, every possible idea. And in this universe, um, the laws of physics cannot be taken for granted,
Hmm.
since every possible falsehood and every possible reality can be discovered in the universe of Borges. Nothing is static, everything is fluid, and as long as there is truth, the same goes for lies as well. This book, nevertheless, this idea has protagonists and characters. The protagonist is Ralph and Julie, two protagonists. Ralph is a computer scientist. He has the experience of world-class education from the University of Berkeley, and he is a musical instruments player, as well as Julie, that he is a mathematician and a musician that attends the Berkeley College of Music, the Berkeley College of Music in the USA. The rationale of the target audience has to do with high school students and university students that I wanted to inspire. I wanted to inspire and influence university education, the feeling of getting a university education. And as a matter of fact, influence for top line performance and for high performance that I only managed to accomplish while at my 40s. As a matter of fact, This was a travel journey, a time traveling for me as well. I traveled back into my early youth. The main concept of these um, top level performance and high performance, high grades for universities has to do for me a lot with the art of inclusion, as well as the fact that Ralph is being put on probation at the University of Berkeley into the book. So as you realize, he is obliged to face the reality of Marx. He is obliged to face the reality of being expelled from the university or continuing his studies. So, combined with the library universe of Borges and many concepts from physics, computer science, genetic algorithms, the fact that computer scientists need a lot to interpret besides doing experiments and besides writing code, the essence of interpretations, the essence of analyzing, the essence of data storytelling is very important. So the mindset of possessing the appropriate mindset for students is very important. It offers the book a lot orientations related with professional and personal rehabilitation and personal development. So I believe that I address university students as well as high-level high school students. I believe grade 11, as I have heard for my other book. This is my main target audience that I would feel delighted to inspire. Nevertheless, it's not only about students and high school pupils. We're
Hmm.
talking about all possible ages above 16 years old. Nevertheless, I made the reduction of the university and the high school orientation to influence youth.
Nice. Nice.
Nevertheless, we're talking about all possible ages above 16 years old are suitable to read my book. High school students and university is just a reduction useful for me to emphasize key points.
Right. It sounds like they would be very interested in the subject matter too.
Yes, yes.
Yes. Yes. Okay. I love that. The you've been how long have you been a writer?
My first book had been written while at 2017
Hmm.
and was published in 2018, 19, excuse me. I
Okay.
started to attend official creative writing classes at the year of 2015. As a matter of fact, as you realize, from the very first day I decided to write the book back in the army, my arcane attempt, it was 2004. We're talking about a maturity of over 13 years before I feel confident enough to attend creative writing classes and start writing my first book almost it was 17. We're talking about 8 years. We're talking about 8 years.
Congratulations.
Yes, yes. We're
Yeah.
talking about 8 years, but I never did it. You have to realize that creative writing is not an art. You do it just to fill up a resume. I never felt I wanted to fill up a resume, my resume and my CV. I believe it was a gradual process where I have to actually feel my calling and listen to my calling. I didn't begin as a resume attribute. And it's almost 8 years right now. But as a matter of fact, this was accelerated. The process of being a writer for me was accelerated in the last 2 or 3 years. As soon as I graduated from university classes and STEM education, to actually feel that I possess a more structured mind to deal with a subject matter and themes and genres very familiar to writers. As a matter of fact, my complete and I can say part-time but also full-time attempt to be a creative writer is almost 6, 7 years.
Nice. Nice. All right. You've been doing this for a little while. That's fantastic. Um,
Yes.
so, not everybody can sit down and just write a book. When it comes to your process for writing the book, do you set aside time each day to write a little bit of it, or do you go ahead and write when you feel emotionally called to do it? What's your process for writing each of your books?
My process is first of all to write regularly.
Okay.
Nevertheless, I do not create a strict time schedules. I believe I can write every day or day after day or every 3 or 4 days. Nevertheless, I try to avoid much of the process of multitasking when I'm writing a book. Of course, inspiration is not something like a robot. It's not an automaton. You have to feel inspired and you have to feel good and feel ready to write, but I write with these 5 books were not written with the full professional standards of screenwriters or creative writers, meaning to develop the 3 act structure, to develop notebooks, or to develop something like software and etc. They were written with brief outlines. As a matter of fact, the same goes for my first book, The Words of Emily Logan. I believe that writing before dealing with structure and before dealing with professional standards is very much inspiration that originates from the subconscious, because if you are a writer, you can realize that there are many levels of the writing process, and there are no geniuses that can deal with, for example, triple distillation before they write a single word. You have to let it flow. You have to let your creative juices flow onto the page, and worry about structure and professional standards much later. Of course, this is a first draft. We're not talking about writing something like Oscaric level from the very first day. It's a gradual process. It takes consultations, it takes research, it takes literary correction. But as a matter of fact, for these 5 books, I tried to keep it minimal and focus on my creativity and inspiration from the very first time I sat down to write them, instead of creating piles of analysis and notebooks and software notes before I decide to write. I just wanted to let my creative juices flow.
Nice, nice. And I've heard you say before that the storytelling and the inspiration comes from the subconscious. And I agree with you. Is there anything that you do or that you have um, that helps you to become more inspired when you're trying to sit down and spend some time writing your book? Where does your inspiration come from?
This answer, I believe, has 2 parts. First of all, I try to stay deeply connected with the creative forces of civilization. And now I explain immediately what I mean creative forces. I try to stay connected to the creative forces that exist in our world as well. What do I mean by that? I've read in ancient Greek tradition of theater and ancient drama of the Greeks, that human beings, in order to live, to perceive, and to feel blissful, the cosmic becoming, excuse me, their mentality is being revealed into the cosmic becoming by four ways. These are art, science, philosophy, and religion. I try to stay connected to the big questions of art and science. I try also, the second part of my answer, to possess something not of the star-like process of writers, but of the archetypal nature of writing. I try to create something like, let's say, how can I express it? Quotable expressions to make my work more memorable. Quotable language, quotable expressions, focus on the archetypal nature of my characters. Nevertheless, I need also to focus on the subject matter. I prefer to try to stay focused to a delicate line of creativity and be inspired not from dark subjects, not from mystical subjects, not from, let's say, not to deal with very much with uh, mysterious, but keep up something of the delicate line of an example like the Walt Disney Company. If you watch the Walt Disney projects, you will notice that this company has a line, a delicate line of subject matter in all of its works. They're not dark, they're not mystical, they're not rebellious, they're not violent. These fairy tale-like attributes and science extravaganza try to portray the beautiful side of our world. I believe inspiration can come from all of these sources. Nevertheless, I believe that it's also an idiosyncratic aspect of my character because inspiration can come from anywhere, I believe. It can come from a photo. It can come from a simple word put on your t-shirt. It can come from something you heard at TV. It can come from nature. It can come from a poem. It can come from everywhere. As long as you accept these interventions and these interruptions in me, I'm talking about myself. As soon as I accept these interventions and interruptions in my creative mindset, and I accept that this is a source and an inspiration I can learn from, I believe I have the inspiration to write. Nevertheless, it takes many layers. It's very complicated to talk about and try to define artistically and scientifically how inspiration originates. I believe it takes years and a lifetime to try to crystallize the building blocks, but I believe I have given you many hints and pictures related with my sources.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, I appreciate that answer. Very thorough. You've written, several books on several different topics, and now you've written this one, the genetic key number, which is on a different topic. Is there a particular genre or subject matter that now that you've written several books that you feel more drawn to, that you feel more comfortable writing with?
I have written many fantasy books, but I believe I am inclined in drama and fairy tales.
Okay.
This was my first concept of what I would like to specialize in. I believe fairy tales have a lot of dramatic elements and psychology elements, and this is a highly competitive distinction I made in my creative writing process. I like drama, I like fairy tales. As soon as I wrote my first fairy tale, When Magic Truly Happens, I decided to focus more and to focus better in fiction literature in general, because my first book was a pocket book. It was a fantasy. Nevertheless, fiction literature is more sophisticated, I believe. Its themes and subject matters and genres from simple fairy tales. The concepts are more complex and more multidimensional. And as soon as I specialized with classes, creative writing classes in fiction literature, I believe my main topics of focus are drama and fiction literature. And I believe this can be correlated as well. Many fairy tales have dramatic elements, as I say, and this is a beautiful dimension to be unfolded in books instead of focusing on robots giving hits or something like, let's say, non-compatible wars where it's a kind of obvious it's something fake. I believe the dimension of drama and psychology can benefit a lot the genre of fiction literature.
Nice. Okay, I can appreciate that. The fantasy and the fairy tales that you're comfortable with, is that what you grew up reading, and is that where that comes from?
I did not come up growing from fiction. I did not grow up with fiction literature and fairy tales. I grew up with science. As a matter of fact, I was awarded a third prize from the Greek national competition in mathematics when I was 16 years old. This was one level before the Mathematics Olympiad, and I grew up a lot with science. Nevertheless, excuse me, I grew up a lot in my last years of high school. I grew up with a complicated fantasy, and as a matter of fact, partly isolated sometimes, spending a lot of time alone studying books in order to enter the university and having influences from magazines of popular science. And as a matter of fact, my origins while in my early teenage years was more like science oriented. I never felt in my teenagehood that I was a writer. Creative writing actually found me. I didn't find creative writing. Creative writing found me, discovered me. This is my process, my journey. I believe you can understand. It was difficult to distinguish whether or not when I was 16 years old, I was inspired from science or epic fantasy, because as you realize, the means back then were very much restricted. There was not internet. There was not in Greece private television. There were not social networks, there was not Facebook, there were not mobile phones. The stimuli was very minimal, and as a matter of fact, there was just a minority of good students who actually tried to enter the university. And as you understand, my stimuli back then were not directly identical to creative writing. Yeah, I was more like science oriented, and this was exhibited in my first pieces and my first samples of creative writing, because I had to actually to rationalize and to simplify, make the simplification crusade to actually try to rationalize my complex fantasy. Nevertheless, I believe I have answered your considerations.
Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I love your answer. The Now, as you have put these books out and you've published them, are you working with a publisher? Are you working with a hybrid publisher, or are you self-publishing these books at this point?
Nowadays, I have decided to to work both with a self-publishing and with a traditional publisher as well. All my books, my first five books, were self-published. Nevertheless, now that I possess, as a matter of fact, a key number, as the title of my book suggests, now that I possess a rather good key number of creative projects, I have also focused on traditional publishing because I realized that the money and the economic perspective is also important, and I have decided to re-engage with my first publisher in Greece. I had self-published my first book, Mathematical Models, in 2004 with a Greek publisher of mine, my professor in mathematics in high school, who had just started his publishing house. This is how you realize I was firstly science oriented and writing came afterwards. Nevertheless, he's a publisher in Greece, and I will have the chance to put my books, two of my books, When Magic Truly Happens and the Genetic Key Numbers right now, that I manually translate them myself. These two books will be put on the Greek shelves, and I will also exploit associations, the association of science, an association of science fantasy in Greece that actually will leverage, uh, they will leverage their audience to meet the demands of book events. So this association and my Greek publisher collaborate, as a matter of fact. So I try to combine many dimensions and many considerations in my projects to actually put my books on the Greek shelves with a traditional publisher beyond self-publishing in the internet, because as you realize, I can have my books, genetic number and other books in paperback and hardcover, because Amazon does print on demand and you can get the books printed and in your hands. Nevertheless, I believe that the self, I do not want to be fanatized with AI and the cyberspace and tell that everything will become digital and it will override traditional commerce. Traditional commerce, I believe, cannot be overridden by the digital transformation in AI. So I believe, as I have explained, that both self-publishing and a Greek publisher of mine will play key roles in my creative writing journey. As a matter of fact, I have a proficiency in the English language, and I make the translations myself. Right now, I translate a genetic number because I have completed the translation of When Magic Truly Happens to not only serve the global cyberspace and the World Wide Web, but the Greek market as well and the Greek shelves.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's another great answer. I appreciate that. Now, when you're working with a publisher, they do some of your promotion for you. When you're doing self-publishing, of course, most of the promotion is up to you. Besides the websites and the publisher that helps you with getting it on the Greek shelves, what do you do to promote your books that has worked well for you that maybe you could share with other authors out there?
I actually have tried to develop my other to develop my other identity as a digital marketeer,
Mhm.
and actually try to unify and embrace many of the principles and the creativity and the web tools that I discover in digital marketing to
Mm.
actually promote my books. I make campaigns in the internet. I create pages. I have created podcasts in SoundCloud and podcasts in the Apple iTunes domain of domain and territory. And I have also managed to look up to shows podcast shows like yours to actually try to bridge and find more avenues to market my books. I have also created a small campaign with generative AI images
Hmm.
to actually enrich my creative content in my campaigns and put the dimension of AI art. As you realize, I use the principle that I try to enter from two doors simultaneously, meaning to embrace the promotion and the creativity as a writer, but also the promotion and the creativity as a digital marketer. This is very beneficial because in digital marketing, you cannot do marketing if you don't have a product or a service. If you have a product or a service, you can do marketing. As a matter of fact, I have created many, as I said, AI podcasts, text-to-speech software, generative AI art images, campaigns in the internet, um, creative writing articles in numerous
Hmm.
platforms, including my creative writing forum. These are very much internet oriented. Nevertheless, the, the, the computer is not only the 21st century revolution, it can also be an idiot as well. I had to envision and realize the creative dimensions behind the computers and behind the laptop because many things pass through a screen and through a computer. Nevertheless, there are many independent dimensions. I believe I have explained some of them to you, mainly the digital transformation revolution. And recently, I try to increase also the pace and the rhythm with which I do podcast interviews. I
Mhm.
have also appeared in a television show of Dr. Trudy Bierman that I actually thought, not completely, that it could benefit and scale up my audience if we do broadcast syndication and appear in an interview that will air globally in worldwide media such as Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, Roku TV. All of these dimensions, I believe, are digitally oriented and cyberspace oriented. But I believe it takes a lot of time to realize that not only the digital dimensions, but also the physical dimensions are equally important. I have explained many of these details in my previous answers, so I believe now you can have a clear picture.
Sounds good.
I have also engaged, many of you in America may know the Medium network.
Hmm.
I have tried to brand myself as a writer to actually bridge my reality with my resume and how I brand myself in the internet. And I have created branding material to be published to journalists, to podcast hosts, to interviews. It's a rather a big chain, as we say, if you happen to know business, Rory, you know, you have studied business, you know the value chain of businesses. Digital marketing has a very big value chain that contribute value to a creative writer. I don't try to focus too much on the number part of the story, on the numbers part of the story. I try to focus on my vision and on my creativity. Nevertheless, now that I'm not new, I believe numbers sometimes are equally important as well. Amazon has a tremendous opportunities in terms of publicizing materials because the statistics and the traffic of the Amazon book pages are very big. I believe now I have explained the key concerns, and all of these contribute, as I said, to my dual nature, promotion and marketing and creativity as a writer, but also as a digital marketeer.
Nice. I can appreciate that. I really can. And you're right. That's got a lot of value to it, the digital marketing. As we kind of, bring this to a close, I am curious. You're an accomplished author. You've written, many books at this point. You've learned a lot.
I also manage. I found the financial freedom to actually seek book reviews and actually get my first human oriented criticism related with my books.
Excellent. Okay, that's another great way to do it. Yeah. And so, like I said, you're an accomplished author at this point. You've got quite a few books out there. Um,
Thanks a lot, Rory.
no problem at all. And you're doing very good work here. So as we kind of wrap this up, there's a lot of authors that are going to be listening to this, of course. And, what is your best piece of advice with what you've learned about being an author that you can give to other authors to help them in their journey?
My best piece of advice, especially to young writers, and to me as well, it's an advice I try to follow myself, is to be yourself. All other roles are taken. We cannot fantasize creative writing only with the glamorous and the shiny and the picturesque and the red carpet or I don't know, the lifestyle broadcasting aspects of artists and art. I believe that to be yourself, to discover your authentic voice, to try to search into your deep soul and feel accustomed and get used not only to your good and shiny and your well articulated side, but also to our dark side as well. Actually, the worst versions of ourselves are equally important to make this journey into darkness and light and play with the forces of good, but also with the forces of evil. It's always a battle between the good and the bad. It's always a battle of between darkness and light. I believe to be yourself and to be themselves and to discover their authentic voice and to listen to their calling and to listen to their own identity. Do not worry about creating for the mean average, but creating to tell the truth. I believe truth is a very important issue when it comes to storytelling. And all of these considerations and arguments, I believe, are breathed with the umbrella to be yourself, because, as a matter of fact, all other roles are taken in life.
I love that. I love that. I appreciate that. That's great advice, sir. Thank you for wrapping us up with that. Folks, this has been author, screenwriter, and storyteller, and author of Genetic Key Number, which we got to discuss today, Menelaos Gkikas. Menelaos, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's really been a
Thanks a
pleasure having
lot,
you on.
Rory. It was an honor that you gave me the step and the stand to be able to speak up my realities in my creative writing journey. It was very enlightening and inspiring, I believe, for the other listeners and viewers.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming on. All right,
Thanks a
folks.
lot, Rory. Have a nice day.
You too. Folks, this has been another episode of the Right Path podcast, where the truth still counts and the keyboard calls us home. This is a place where authors know that every page is a step forward. So let's lift each other up, let's dust ourselves off, and let's move forward together.